What is real? Real is simply electrical signals interpreted by your brain.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth!
Open your mind.
All right. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. My name is Josh, and welcome to the Repill Project's Conversations on the Fringe. This is where we take a break from the political and the economic turmoil that is happening in the world, and we start looking inside of our minds and go on through the edges of reality and look deeper into different things, especially conspiracies. These are typically conversations that are reserved for the campfires or for that drink with a friend and the deep dive into those things that aren't usually talked about. And tonight, my guest is Mrs. Cathy O'Brien. If you don't know Cathy, Cathy was born in 1957 in Michigan. She is a nationally and internationally recognized U.S. government whistleblower on the subject of MK Ultra mind control. And she's also someone who has healed from it and is teaching and helping others to come out of all of this. In 1995, when the National Security Act was invoked on her testimony for U.S. Congressional Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence Oversight, that testimony was released from her book, Transformation of America, written by herself and Mark Phillips. Welcome to the show, Cathy. How have you been? It's been a while since we talked.
Yeah, it's really good to see you again. I'm doing great. I'm so excited to see people finally waking up and learning to expand their thought beyond what they think they know, to embrace the reality of what in the world is going on. As people grasp that truth more and more, they're going to stop complying with a dark agenda and live life the way it's intended to be lived. So I'm really excited. I'm happy. I'm loving speaking out. It was really good seeing you in Loveland, Colorado, and getting to talk to you eye to eye, heart to heart, soul to soul. That was absolutely wonderful. But it's good to travel around the country and see that people are indeed waking up.
Absolutely. And you know, I think that's one of the best points of this conversation that we're going to have today. We are at that juncture in our society, in our world, in our conscious evolution as human beings that, you know, more and more people are waking up. But when you start waking up, it's like in that morning when you roll out of bed and you're still groggy and you're still foggy and you're trying to grasp your balance and you're trying to figure things out. And in our world today, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation. Most of it comes from the government. Most of it comes from the organizations surrounding the government. But there is a lot of bad information out there for people. So it's important for people who have the experience in various different parts of how the world has been thrown in the darkness to come out there and share their experiences. So, I mean, to begin with, can you just give us a little background for the audience members who have maybe never heard of you or who are interested in learning more? Give us a little background of your experiences in life and where that's taken you.
Well, I think, you know, every day when I wake up slow. I don't jump up by an alarm clock and have to run off and go do something. I wake up slow. You need to take your time, process information, think things through. And the more people take time to do that, they're going to realize that what we're seeing today isn't new. What's new is that we're seeing it. This stuff has been going on my whole life. I know. I am a survivor of it. I was trafficked as a small child to politically affluent perpetrators who use blackmail against each other to hold each other in line and to make them comply with an adverse agenda that's actually, you know, very harmful to humanity. Like I said, it's been going on my whole life, and people are finally seeing it. They're realizing that we share this planet with a real dark, negative energy force. They are not like us. They do not like us. And it's time we stop complying, because their greatest fear is our vibration. When we remember who we are, why we're here, and live life the way it's intended to be lived, with soul expression, with compassion, with understanding of each other. And when we live the love we are, it's a higher vibration than they can reach. So they want to keep us low. So in that regard, it's a spiritual battle. So what a vast array of manipulation and information we have to discuss today.
We do. And, I want to start kind of with this, is that, for everybody out there who doesn't know, I was in the United States military for 10 years. My first 3 deployments were to the South Pacific. I was a nobody. I was just a simple workhorse in the military. But, on a smaller ship, you get trained in many different aspects. And I joined the Visit Board Search and Seizure team on my first deployment. And we did counter narcotics out there. So we were looking for drug smugglers coming from South America, going into Central America, and then they would ship the drugs up from there into the US border. And the other aspect of that, what we kept an eye out for, was human traffickers and smugglers. There was this one time, it was really a wake-up call for me, because I was aware of all these things. I was deep into researching conspiracy and the occult and all these things when I was in the military. But there was this experience that kind of happened, and it wasn't expected. And we were out in the South Pacific, hundreds of miles away from any continental landmass. And we had a radar contact, and we started moving towards the radar contact, and we came upon this barge, an open roof barge. So it's just a big gray steel platform that's just floating in the ocean. As we got closer, we noticed that there was people on it. And we get up with our big gray naval ship, and it's children, ages 5 to probably 13, 14 years of age, girls and boys. We get down there to process these children to see what's going on. We had a Coast Guard law enforcement detachment that was already with us, and they knew exactly what was going on. But this was my first experience with this. And you had pregnant 12-year-olds on board. You had a child that didn't make it. They had been out there for almost 2 weeks. And then you learn really kind of what happens. In South America, the economy is so bad that families struggle to raise families. So what happens is they're presented various different opportunities, typically from cartels. Cartels will go to local fishermen, and they will tell the fishermen to go and recruit from the towns to grab children. They want various different children, this age group or whatnot. They'll have all the children meet at the end of the month at the pier, and the parents actually pay for this to happen, because the fishermen lie to the parents and tell the parents that we are going to take your child to the United States of America, and they're going to have a better life there, and that we have families there that are ready to take in your children. This is kind of the deception that occurs. And the children get taken on the fishing vessel, and the fishing vessel goes a little bit out, and then they get transferred to a barge, and they're given no food and no water, and they're dropped off in the middle of the ocean with a GPS transponder. And what's supposed to happen is another ship is supposed to come from Central America, find this barge in the middle of the ocean, and then take them into Central America, to where they start that long trek walking from Central America all the way up to the US border. And 7 out of 10 of these barges are never found. And that's the sad thing. That was what really, boom, hit hard, right? And, these children are being trafficked every day. This happens all the time. And there's barges floating out there that will never be found with children's lost lives on them. And it's a sad and horrible thing. But for me, it was a paradigm change of how the world operates and how the world works. How could someone be so cold and evil? How could someone be so just inhumane, unhuman. And then you start realizing the grander conspiracy is that there is a dark force that operates in this world, that there is an evil presence in this world that has control over a lot of the minds of humanity and has organized them more towards the objective of power and gain and profit over everything else. And later in my life, I learned that it's these multinational corporations, it's these the international crime syndicates that control this human trafficking operation. That, yeah, it might be the cartels at a lower level or a pimp on the street that is operating these functions, but at the higher level, the one that is getting paid and making the most money is the international crime syndicates. And this is owned by multi-billionaires and global elitists and secret societies. And it's controlled through nonprofit organizations that embezzle taxpayer dollars, nonprofits and NGOs that then distribute that out to various different handlers on the street that bring this into criminal organizations like the cartels, like gangs and like drug lords and so forth. And then they do the dirty work. They act as the army and the handy boy for these criminal organizations. And this operates globally without fail. And they don't get investigated. They don't get arrested. And the only time that you'll see human traffickers getting arrested, even today, is when they're competing with the big boys business. And that's the sad thing that we have in this world right now. What are your thoughts on this?
It is. Well, I experienced MK Ultra on a White House Pentagon level. So I was deep in the swamp among the perpetrators that steal elections and fund their global agenda with drug and human trafficking across open borders. They always have. It's been going on my whole life. So that's their funding mechanism. It's their money. It's why the human trafficking operations are among the most lucrative in the world. The children are the ones who are targeted, and they're also used in blackmail operations to compromise other politicians or other people in positions of power and influence to comply with this globalist agenda. Because when you go all the way to the top and follow the money, it's a small handful at the top who are doing all of the manipulation. And they do it through coercion, blackmail, mind control, and other aspects. I got an inside view of their inner workings and their operations because I was thrust into MK Ultra mind control as a very young child. My father was caught sending child pornography of me through the U.S. mails and was told he could receive immunity from prosecution if he would sell me into the CIA's MK Ultra mind control. He did. The local politician that approached him and made him that offer was one I had been trafficked to at my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge ever since I was a little toddler. And that politician was Gerald Ford. He went on to become the unelected president of the United States. And as his political career escalated, so too did my victimization in MK Ultra. The important thing to learn from this is that the pedophile agenda is a mind control agenda. The sexualization of our children has been sanctioned my whole life. This was like back in 1960 when national security was invoked on my father's case, and he went free and received lucrative military contracts as a result of selling me into MK Ultra. So our justice system has been compromised for a long time. National security is key. Secrecy is key because knowledge is our defense against mind control. Once we become aware of what this handful of puppet masters at the top is doing, it's like knowing how a magic trick works. All of a sudden, the spell is broken. It doesn't work anymore. And that's exactly how it is with mind control. So they operate in secrecy. They hide under secret societies, in secret meetings, and under secrecy of national security. So as you were talking, I just was sure you were going to say that by the time they got to the border, if anyone was caught, national security was invoked. And that's exactly what happened in the late 80s and early 90s, the head of U.S. Customs, William Von Raab, was screaming with everything he had about this drug and human trafficking across our borders that was being sanctioned under national security. And of course, the media censored him and they made mockery of him and, and everything else. But there's a lot of good people who've been trying to get this information out for a long, long time. There's people in all different positions who saw what you saw and had the moral fortitude to do exactly what you're doing and bring the truth to light.
Yeah. There's a few things I want to ask you about and talk about here, a few points that you expressed, and that is the idea of mind control. So it's something I think that is used loosely in the sense of the social circuits we have today, Facebook and X and stuff. But talk a little bit more about how mind control, at least through the various different MK projects through the CIA, operated and what the purpose was.
Well, mind control is a sliding scale from the kind of torturous, robotic MK Ultra mind control I experienced to information control, because we all formulate our thoughts, our opinions, and ultimately our actions based on what we know. We need to know that knowledge base has been deliberately altered for a long, long time. Again, they operate under secrecy and they do not want the truth out there. Truth really does make us free. The formula for mind control is the same, whether it's of an individual, a nation, or the world. Trauma is the basis of it. And this formula for mind control came into the US in the wake of World War II through Project Paperclip, when we imported the Nazi and fascist scientists into the US. With them came this formula for mind control. And they found through Hitler-Himmler research, there's no trauma more horrific on the human mind than sexual abuse of a child prior to age 5 while the brain is still forming. It actually shuts down neuron pathways in the brain. It shuts down conscious thought. It shuts down our ability to think free and keeps us operating on a subconscious level where that subconscious is fueled with misinformation and misdirection. So when we understand how simple that formula is, we also see why other components of it are sleep, food, and water deprivation. These keeps our brain starved. And if our brain is starved, it's not firing properly either. So ultimately, the goal is to prevent the brain from firing in its full capacity, which will limit our ability to think and create a compliant society, which is exactly what is wanted for what Adolf Hitler, George Bush, and Joe Biden, and all these unelected perpetrators term New World Order. And by any other name, it's a slave society agenda where a handful of big guys make all the money, we do all the work, and we comply with their agenda. Their agenda ultimately is to inhibit our capacity for free thought, because I know from my own experience in MK Ultra that without free thought, there's no free will. Mm-hmm. With no free will, we're compliant. With no free will, we have no soul expression. Without soul expression, we lose touch with our purpose. We lose touch with our ability to have compassion for each other. And that makes it easy to divide us, because united, we stand, divided, we fall. It's just very, very true. So they want us to suppress. They want that soul expression suppressed. If we can't think to bring it to mind and expand to have that aspect, that inhibits our ability to tap into the strength of the human spirit and that infinite power of love, which is the highest vibration. It's who we really are inside. It's our energy source. It's the most powerful force in the universe. They know that. They fear that. And it's not their vibration. Theirs is very low, dark, negative, fear, hate. on a very low vibration. That's what they feed off of. That's why they create so much negative energy with trauma after trauma. It's why they literally feed off of our children. So when we realize that they're very, very low vibration, they fear our high vibration, and that is why they're using mind control for ushering in their slave society agenda. It's contrary to humanity's purpose. It's contrary to our innate being. And all we need to do is remember who we are and why we're here, and understand that we've been manipulated a long, long time. And ultimately, that is game over. When we start living the love we are and living our purpose, we win. It's game over. And that's what they're so scared of.
You nailed it right there. I absolutely loved what you just said. And I want to deep dive a little bit on a few of the things that you said. You talked about the brain's firing, the neurological firings. My research over 30 years into various esoteric mysteries, the occult, into who I am, really. A lot of it is, who am I, right? I'm just trying to discover who this person, Josh, really is take me on a journey. But one of the things I began to understand is that we look at communication as this form of speech, right? We talk, and that's what communication actually is. But I began to realize over my years that when we talk, that is just the last level of communication.
Yes.
Is that prior to speaking, there is intentionalization, there is imagination and thoughts and ideas and emotion that is all attached to that level of thought. But before that, there are neurological firing patterns. And if we think about the soul and the body as a convergence, two things coming together, then we have to look at the idea of what is that first point of communication for that soul, for that spirit in the body? Well, that's going to be our neurological system. That is going to be the electromagnetic system in our body that operates. And I've always looked at a thought as a pattern and sequence of neurological firing over time. So if we think about trillions upon trillions of neurons firing in sequences and patterns over time, this is what a thought is. So the original communication is these neurological firing patterns. And then we can have various different kind of frequencies of operation. And we call these archetypes in the occult. This is what Dr. Carl Jung talked about in the sense of the 12 archetypes. And this derives from the 12 ganglia centers that operate within your brain, and how each one of them functions as a neurological transmitter into the neurological structure of your body, and how they operate kind of like a channel on a TV. Now, I wanted to lay that preface for everybody out there, because once we begin to understand that all communication is the soul to the neurological center, and that our neurological centers are firing, that is giving off frequencies, and we can feel that and communicate with that. And that is that divine power of love that is flowing through us, that people can feel you. That's why we feel that love when somebody enters into the room. But more importantly here is that with MK Ultra and various aspects of mind control, what is really happening is they are manipulating not your voice, not your thoughts in your mind, but they are manipulating those neurological firing patterns. And what Cathy was just saying there, but by the age of 5 or by the age of 7, this is when your body and your mind and your soul are learning how to communicate at that neurological level. This is why we exist in that delta state, and that we're highly receptive to everything around us, because we're absorbing the electromagnetic frequencies and all the various different resonant structures around us, taking it in, which is formulating the basis for all these archetypes that'll operate within us through these neurological patterns of firing in our life. And that when you start inducing aspects of psychological and emotional and sexual trauma on the children at that very, very age, it begins to damage those receptor areas within those neurological transmission lines. It starts forming new ones. If anybody is familiar with MK Ultra research, what you get is you kind of get like this this idea that they create this separate subconscious entity, this separate subconscious container. And this happens because the mind wants to protect itself from the trauma. And the CIA would go in there, and then they would reprogram this this subconscious little area to be Manchurian candidates, to be a active shooter, to be these different things. And it's induced by the trauma because the brain has to find a way to cope with all the overstimulation that is coming in, that is providing all this negative aspect in itself. So I want people to understand that what Cathy is talking about is spot on right in the sense of how the scientific aspect of these things operates. This is the basis for MK Ultra. This is why they utilize massive amounts of psychotropic drugs, because one of the primary things that they do with psychotropic drugs is they affect the neurological firing patterns within your body, within your neurological system, and within your brain. LSD itself takes the dendrites of your neurons and opens them on wide open and allows dopamine and serotonin to just shoot right across, which means that it's producing this kind of tapestry of patternization, which can be programmed if it's in the right environment. And this is what the CIA and various other institutions like the Tavistock Institute did for a long time.
I love the way you have absolutely laid this out and explained it from that perspective, because you've totally defined telepathy in the course of what you're saying, which is just like, that is so primitive, innate to us. And if people realize that, we can learn to trust each other above and beyond words when we start hearing on a deeper level. But on the MK Ultra mind control aspect, from my experience, my father's sexual abuse of me began when I was an infant, and I couldn't think to know what he was doing was wrong. I couldn't, it's all I knew. So, but my brain knew. So we have this defense mechanism in our brain where if something is so overwhelmingly traumatic, it shuts down the neuron pathways around that event and shoves that event deep into the subconscious that represses that memory so the rest of the mind can develop and function normally. Well, after you get so many of these compartmentalized memories shoved down, you have less and less firing going on in the brain. So between like the way you described it and what it felt like from inside of me, then those neuron pathways, that the memory contained here was my father's sexual abuse. The memory contained here was pornography. The memory contained here was trafficking. So as that's happening, my father comes in to sexually abuse me. The part of me that knows how to deal with it opens back up. It triggers. That's a trigger. Triggers open, fires, responds, and opens up to deal with the abuse again and again as needed. Same with all the other compartments. What happens in the brain of a child while their brain is, when that happens, while their brain is still forming, there's no intercommunication between this compartment, this compartment, this compartment. There's no continuity of thought. There's no ability to think, to bring to mind what happened here while you're over here doing this. And if there's no ability to connect that, there's no awareness of time. There's no continuity of time. And when that is completely lost, when that's a complete disconnect, that creates what is used in like military special forces to create hyper endurance, an ability to keep going and going and going, because you don't know the brain is not signaling the body to be tired because there's no continuity saying, well, I already did that. I did that, instead everything's fresh and new. And so you get this heightened endurance. There are so many aspects of how our bodies can be affected by that mind-brain disruption of communication to it. And then when mind control programming enters in, it starts driving those aspects of our human experience from outside influence rather than from within, with the strength of spirit and the power of love and the intention for living life's purpose. All of that gets lost to this outside influence to the point where it can actually physically take over the body in that regard.
Absolutely. And I find it interesting as well that, you know, we want to think that because there's congressional hearings, because people were given the finger by congressmen, that these things stopped. It's very similar to the military industrial complex out there for people who followed me on this aspect, is that it didn't stop within our government. It just moved out of oversight. It moved out of the Department of Defense and it went into government contractors and went deep inside of them to where there's money embezzled into these programs. And so if anybody's wondering where that moved to outside of the government, outside of the CIA, you start looking at the investments that the CIA made during that time. Many people don't necessarily go out there and make this connection, but you have Operation Mockingbird and MK Ultra are one and the same. The control of the evening news, the control of information, the dissemination of information are one and the same. In the late 1990s, a Central Intelligence Agency, in collaboration with DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Association, produced an incubator for startup companies and businesses called In-Q-Tel. In-Q-Tel went out there and funded various different businesses. Two of the primary ones that we know about today are a company called Google and another company called Facebook. DARPA was working on a project called LifeLog in 1998 to 2004. The objective of LifeLog was to use this new invention called the internet to begin gathering all the personal and psychological information of American citizens, as well as the behavioral information. LifeLog shut down on January 14th, 2014, just exactly the same day that Facebook was started as a company after they received funding directly from In-Q-Tel. Now, Facebook has, over the last, 20 years, they have developed algorithms. Now, we like to think that social media or Google, these are massive platforms for a search engine or for social sharing of information and family pictures. But in actuality, these are marketing platforms, and marketing is the devil for people out there who don't understand this. It might have a nice little calm, cool name, but what it is manipulation at the highest levels. Facebook has taken 20 years of human information. And that information, I want people to truly understand the information that you give off on your phone. You have GPS indicators, you have accelerometers, you have all these different types of little gadgets inside your phone. Facebook knows exactly how far your phone is off the ground. It knows exactly the direct position you are on this planet. It knows when you take that phone, you put it up to your ear. It knows when you put it in your front pocket near your heart. It knows when you put it in your back pocket. It knows when you're speaking into it. It knows exactly what you're doing on the in private incognito browsers. It knows exactly what you're searching for. It knows exactly what you're looking for. It knows all of your habits. It knows when you go to the bathroom. It knows when you eat. It knows how you drive to work, the route that you take. It knows every single behavioral characteristic about you. And for 20 years, it's been accumulating that data. Now we learn that that data is being fed into the Google AI, the quantum AI system, and it's being aggregated in there. And I want people to start to see that it was found out that the apps on your phone give off various low frequency tones. Facebook being one of them. So when you're scrolling on Facebook, the app is actually giving off a subliminal tone that you can't hear, that is actually there. And it's in training your brain to align with a frequency that makes it highly receptible to the content that is now being pushed in front of you. And I want people to see that MK Ultra never ended. See, they know your behaviors. They know what triggers you. They know what can push you over the edge or make you do other things. And so what they do is they strategically place content in your feeds. And this is not just on Facebook. This is all apps. They'll strategically place content in your feeds. They'll put other types of trigger mechanisms on the right-hand side on your peripheral. So you don't see it consciously. You see it subconsciously. And what this does is kind of, I like to explain our emotional body as a cup that fills up, right? And that when it starts to overflow, it can overflow into our body and produce illness and disease and cancer and all these types of things. But what we're seeing there is this content acts as what I call micro emotional stimulants. And you might not recognize that you're having an emotional reaction to the content that is actually being thrown at you on these apps, but you are. And eventually, over time, those micro emotional stimulants build up to a large degree, and that cup begins to overflow, and you start having an emotional reaction. But you don't know this because you're just scrolling Facebook. And what they will do is they've got this timed down for people to a T. And what they'll do is they'll put something in front of your face that is going to trigger that emotional reaction. And typically on a marketing platform, that's a buy now. Go visit this website and order this. And that's how they get you. But that same mechanism can be utilized for, let's just say, radicalization and extremism of a teenage person who's lost and found himself within the LGBT trans agenda. And now he's going in joining a Discord group of like-minded people, to where this Discord group is owned by a former FBI agent, like the Uvalde and the Buffalo shooters, who were both on the same Discord channel. They found it through social media, and they go on there, and now they become groomed and radicalized to be active shooters, to go out there and do these horrific acts, because social media has already entrained their brain to that right compartmentalization. And now it's all about the programming. And I want people to know this, because once you're aware that social media has a purpose to entrain your mind towards an agenda, to program your mind towards their will, you become greater than, you empower yourself, and they become disempowered. You learn how the trick is done, and you can never allow it to influence you again.
Exactly. That's just, I love that. Again, it's just so brilliantly explained and stated. And it's like why you can even just think a thought, and all of a sudden an advertisement for it will pop up on your phone, and it's like, it's because of the frequency. It's got the intricacies, capabilities down, but the point is the same no matter what level of mind control we're looking at. Knowledge is our defense against it, because once we're aware, the spell is broken. Once we're aware, we know to put down our devices, get out in nature, breathe in the air, feel the earth underneath our feet. I mean, really feel it. Feel the wind on our skin, the sun on our skin. Feel that, and reconnect with our nature, reconnect with the divine by just getting out and experiencing life away from the devices. And that's something that I think people are realizing more and more needs to be done, because the programming has been going on a long time through the media, all the way back with the Kennedy assassination. That's when this dark global cabal really took control here in the United States, was with the Kennedy assassination. And the fact that Gerald Ford is the one who covered that up, and then was rewarded as an unelected president of the United States, gave me quite an inside view into the manipulation of the human mind through the media at that time. It was, we look at Ford's cabinet, and he had George Bush to head the CIA. He had Dick Cheney, Donald Rumsfeld, who gave us artificial sweetener aspartame that stops critical analysis, free thought, affects the firing of our brain through our food. He had Henry Kissinger, that he did the first depopulation agenda with, a depopulation agenda that has now taken the pedophile agenda to the point of transgenderism, which stops human procreation altogether, which is part of the depopulation plan. He had Nelson Rockefeller, and then he had Jack Valenti, who's head of the Motion Picture Association of America, as his press secretary. Jack Valenti is the one who gave us the repetitive narrative, so that when we say Kennedy assassination, we all see the bullet going into his head, because that's happened over and over and over. And it's also when the term conspiracy theory came into being, because anybody who questions the repetitive narrative was considered a conspiracy theorist. It was to shame people away from thinking free, from questioning, from wanting further answers. So that came into being at the time. All of that, as it came in, we also got the electronic voting machines. That was to ensure that key people were placed in high positions of influence and power so that they could start manipulating the population even further through the political agenda. And the shadow government came in behind the scene, the deep state, whatever we want to call it, the globalists started making sure that they were placed. Elections have been rigged ever since the inception of electronic voting machines. The algorithm has been created to place these people. In 2016, so many people were awake and aware that we actually overrode the rigged electronic algorithm and the voting machine to put in a president that wasn't Hillary Clinton and her New World Order. That many people were already standing up against this globalist dark agenda. So by 2020, these perpetrators were so frantic, they used mind control masks as a virus on the global population to just blatantly steal elections right in front of all of us. Now, as I mentioned, the elections, I just want to make the point of it's the media that gives us contrived polls and tells us who's ahead when that keeps us blaming each other, going, what? It's you? When in fact, it keeps us from looking at this handful of puppet masters at the top who are pulling the strings and dividing the people with these contrived polls as a setup for rigged elections. We're still experiencing it today. It's the same game over and over and over. It's been going on, I'm sure, before the Kennedy assassination, but it came on strong and in earnest since then. And what you described with the cell phones and the frequencies and the algorithms there, it's just the technology has advanced to new more far-reaching levels, but our defense against it is still the same. It's the knowledge that maintains our free thought, free will, strength of spirit. When we have that soul expression, that innate purpose, that innate energy source of our being is our saving grace. It's our victory, and it's impenetrable. It's the ultimate strength when we think to use it and access it. So no matter what the devices, no matter what the manipulation, it all comes back to our own spiritual evolution and knowing who we are and why we're here.
I love it. There's a few points of what you were talking about there I want to talk about. Number one is I want to help everybody with a history lesson here. You mentioned the name Henry Kissinger. Now, this is an interesting name because there's a tidbit about Henry Kissinger that many people don't know. Henry Kissinger was a sergeant in the United States Army. He came over and got nationalized in the United States of America, became a dual citizen. He was a German Jew, came over to the United States, became an American citizen, joined the United States Army, was a sergeant in the United States Army, and joined it was called the Counterintelligence Corps in the United States Army. This was the precursor to OSS and the precursor to the CIA. He became friends with a guy by the name of Fritz Kramer, who recognized his German accent. Now, Henry Kissinger actually was over in Germany right after the war teaching. And so he was recruited by Fritz Kramer through the CIC, the Counterintelligence Corps, to go out. And because he had a German accent, because he spoke German fluently, for the U.S. Army, he was the one that went out and started rounding up everybody under Operation Paperclip. He's the one that went and recruited all the scientists, all the German generals, and brought them back. So if anybody's wondering how Henry Kissinger fits into this pie, this is the beginning of where Henry Kissinger starts. He was at the beginning of Operation Paperclip. He saw it from the evolution because he was a critical component and the person who went out there and recruited all these people for the U.S. side. The other parts of it came out through Nuremberg and the deals that were made. But I wanted to put that out there. Now, you also mentioned depopulation. Isn't it interesting? Because this is the first time ever in my life that I've heard one of the key talking parts of a presidential election being in vitro fertilization, IVF. Why is this a big thing? IVF. Trump is talking about IVF. Kamala is talking about IVF. For anybody that doesn't know, this is to help people get pregnant. And the reason why it's such a big thing is because I believe it's now 38% of Americans cannot have children naturally. They can't get pregnant. They need IVF treatments. And for anybody out there who's hearing that, that should blow your eyes up, because the whites are like, wait, what? We have been so poisoned, so manipulated, that we've lost our way. We can no longer reproduce naturally. That is a very, very scary, to the point where it is one of the main talking points in the 2024 election is IVF. What? Like, it is absolutely mind-blowing. And then the other part, and I'm going to comment on all these, and I can go back and kind of give you the direction, is you were talking about the JFK assassination, and it just always takes me to the Zapruder film, right? Is back into the left, right? But see, that was psychological warfare, people. They wanted you to see John F. Kennedy's head get blown up. They wanted you to see Bobby get shot. They wanted you to see these people get assassinated. This is why about a month and a half ago in the attempted assassination attempt on Donald Trump, there was a New York Times reporter there with a camera right in front of Donald Trump with his frame rate setting to Warfield Battlefield, to 1/8,000th of a frame, to where he would have been able to capture the bullet hitting the head and the brain splattering, and would have been able to post that on the newspapers and would have been able to put it on TV, because that is the psychological warfare and how sick, dark, and demented these people really are. And just know that MK Ultra is absolutely going on today, and it's happening right now in front of you. But Cathy, I'm sorry, I went on a rant, but there's those three things that I wanted to talk about.
Yeah. But I'm really glad you brought that up, because it was going to be the final blow. It didn't happen. We can call it divine intervention. We can call it anything we want. I tend to think of it as a part of the fact that so many people are awake and aware and reclaiming their free thought, free will, soul expression, strength of spirit, that we've raised a vibrational frequency above and beyond their capacity to carry out exactly the plans that they have in place. It's another level of victory that defies explanation on certainly on so many levels. You probably have way better words for it than I could ever come up with, perceptually speaking. They're losing their ability to even carry out their plans and intentions. Even if they have everything in place for the setup, it's still not happening the way that they want it to. And there's something to that. If people continue to raise the collective consciousness, we're going to be able to continue on this path of overcoming. And as we do, to me, the ultimate, everywhere I speak, it's to remind people that we have all the power. Mm-hmm. We have so much power within us when we remember who we are and why we're here. And these perpetrators, this dark negative energy force, only has as much power as we give them or let them steal. So as we move forward, and however the politics of the day unfold, the point is the same, that we need to remember our own power. We need to start living our own lives. We've been conditioned for generations to look outside ourselves to authority, to big government, big pharma, big cult-to-cult religion, big tech, to tell us how to live our lives. And it keeps us looking out here instead of in here. When we go within and remember, that is what's going to make all the difference in the world. When we overrode that rigged electronic algorithm 2016, we had an opportunity in front of us, but people weren't awake and aware enough to realize it's up to us. You don't drain the swamp one person from the top down. It takes all of us to drain it from the bottom up. If we want to see change in the world, it's up to us. We need to do it and get this big government attitude repositioned and rethink it to its proper perspective. We don't need big government. There's too much influence over our lives. We need to get back to what really counts, get our feet in the earth, get back out in nature, reconnect with the divine, grow our own food, nourish our soil so that we can grow nutritious food to feed our brains again. Get the fluoride out of our water, get these chemicals away from us, and realize too the importance of getting sleep has been absolutely disrupted. People have to work a 9 to 5, 5 to 9. They're too exhausted to have time to think about this. They got to jump out of bed without that luxury and latitude of processing and moving into a day with meaning and purpose. We need to take all of that back, and that's up to us, each individual one of us, government or not, history or not, regardless of what in the world has happened out there. This is our time to remember who we are, why we're here. And as we reclaim that, we're going to be able to effectively protect our children going forward, because our children ultimately are the ones who are being targeted because of that manipulation of the brain prior to age 5 while the brain's still forming. And I'm living proof that regardless of what's been done, regardless of our genetics, mine's so horrible, regardless of all of that, soul is stronger than genetics. It's stronger than all of that. And we do have an opportunity in front of us, but it begins with each and every one of us, regardless of what our political future holds.
Wow. That was so powerful on so many levels, because, we tend to get inside of our own minds. We tend to forget about the world. You and I, before the show, we were talking about the realms of cause and effect, and most people, we kind of have this default level that we go to that's we're reacting to the world around us. When you're reacting to the world around you, you're forgetting about who you are. You're forgetting about what you are. You're forgetting about the power within you. And this is what they want you to think. This is where they want you to be. But at the end of the day is that we have to empower ourselves. And in order to empower ourselves, as you say, knowledge is power. We have to know ourselves. And on a spiritual context, this is one of the things that I've discovered in my life, is that Socrates said, ipsum te gnosis, which is know yourself. It is the crux of all of occultism, like on the light side, on the good side. What they try to tell people is that you have to know yourself. And I'll put this out there for the audience that's listening, is that we're talking about neurological firing patterns as this preface of communication. And Cathy actually hit on it. She's like, you just described telepathy. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's how this operates, right? So on that same side is that when we are operating in that nature, we have this ability to influence each other to such a large degree and extent. But you also have this ability to learn about another person. And so I always say it like this, is that when you're talking with somebody, you typically like, hey, I like that person, or I don't like that person. We always have this. And what that really is that number one is I cannot know another person. I cannot get inside their brain, feel their thoughts, know their emotions, or have the same neurological firing patterns that going on inside their mind at that time, or experience anything that they're experiencing. But instead, what happens is when we communicate, there's frequencies that are generated, whether it's through my words, and the carrier frequency of my words are generating emotional signals, which are producing something within them, or it's the electromagnetic frequencies and neurological firing patterns. But what happens is that when two people communicate, they have an exchange of frequency, and that starts to trigger things inside of us. And I look at it in the sense that the reason we like other people, or we have these deep relationships or connections to other people, is because they reflect aspects of our own self. Is when we communicate with them, they're resonating something within us that makes us feel good, that brings that, right? So in order to know somebody, you have to know a certain level and degree of yourself. You cannot know anybody better than you know yourself. And I think it's really important to express that, because when we turn inward and we start to find the divine and start to understand what God really is we understand that I can't know God unless I know myself. The only extent that I can know God is to the extent that I know myself. And you were saying it so beautifully there, is that we have to empower ourselves. We have to know ourselves. We have to get this innate knowledge, and we forget about that on a day-to-day basis. We tend to just kind of like, okay, I'm gonna wake up and go into the rat race all over again. 9 to 5 job, come home miserable. 6 beers later, I'm gonna eat a shitty dinner, and I'm gonna go to sleep and not get enough, and I'm gonna wake up in the morning tired and do it all over again. And see, that's the problem of the world, is we're forgetting about who we are. We're forgetting about looking inside and discovering what truly matters.
That's so beautiful when Mark, intelligence insider, work in the highest levels of intelligence mind sciences to preserve the sanctity of free thought, ultimately for spiritual reasons. He was just so wise. When he lifted my daughter and me out of the Washington, D.C. swamp and handed me keys to my own mind, we were safe for the first time in my life. He was so handsome. He was so big energy. He was everything. And it was like, oh, I just loved him instantly. And he wouldn't have anything to do with me. He said, you have to know who you are to have something to give in a relationship. You have to heal first. So it was a great motive for me to heal as fast as I could, But I thought, how am I going to know who I am? And he taught me that by picking up a pen and writing on paper, it actually opens neuron pathways in the brain. So this repressed memory of my father's trauma over here, if I'm writing it out by hand on paper, it actually activates the logic part of the brain to move a pen. Typing does not do the same thing. This is just a brain trick we all can use. And it takes the emotionally incomprehensible knowledge, shifts it over to logic. It's seen in front. And then all of a sudden it's consciously viewed. Healing is happening on psychiatric, psychological, emotional, all levels, all at once. It's a great thing all of us can do to expand our thinking, to deal with repressed trauma, to deal with any fear, negativity, anything that's immobilizing us. Pick up that pen and paper, write it out. So I started writing out my memory. And as I did, I realized consciously all that I had been forced to do under mind control. All that I had heard was the plan for humanity. And I was so overwhelmed by it all. I told Mark, I said, I don't know how I can live with myself. And he said, you are not responsible for what you were forced to do under mind control. But now that you're aware, you're responsible for all of your actions going forward. And it's like so profound. If everybody realized that, they could understand what happened during mind control masked as a virus, why families got separated in COVID, and why they can come right back together when they open up their minds and open up their hearts to realize we are not responsible. Mark told me, he said, your abusers are responsible and they need to be held accountable for their actions. We need to see some justice in this country. These people who manipulated the global population, these self-appointed, self-anointed, unelected leaders need to be held accountable for what they have done to humanity. We need to see that justice. But whether we see it or not, I've been waiting for over 35 years to see justice, and found the ultimate justice is positive change through public awareness. So, we all need to realize that the process of understanding ourselves can happen with or without that justice. We need to forgive ourselves and understand what happened. So in that process, I'm starting to remember who I am and why I'm here. And I thought, well, who am I? I can't do it through daily affirmations and look outside myself. I've had enough outside influence telling me who I am and what to do. I need to find it in here. And I went to the base core energy of my being, and I found that energy is love. So I realized rather than try to love myself, it was easier just to live the love I am. By living the love I am, all of that other took care of itself. And all of a sudden, I was able to think clear. I was able to think free and for myself. I was able to think in terms of solutions and a path forward. And in that process, I remembered why I'm here, who I am, what my life's purpose is. And as that happened, that is when Mark and I fell in love. That is when we were able to have a relationship. And there's something to that whole aspect of love that people have forgotten. Is something so much deeper than manipulating this person to be a 50-50. Mark and I were 100-100. You know, we were both 100% in who we are. We didn't always agree on everything. And it was great when we didn't, because one of us got to learn something, you know, and so there's like no threat to a difference anymore. It changes the whole attitude of what a relationship can be. And together we were a powerful force. Together we were a wonderful balance for each other. Because Mark definitely had his way of thinking, I had mine, and it made for a good balance between the two of us. So, you know, love can grow from that, but it's somewhere in that process is what's going to bind us all together again as humanity. And if we look for the common thread on love, it should be love for the children. Ultimately, that should be what brings humanity together and allows us to live the love we are.
One of my spiritual teachers throughout my life told me this, and he said, when you get older, you'll realize what it means, and it's be that which you are. And we tend to think that, oh, well, you know, just be yourself, right? But it's be your innate nature, be that soul that you are, that expression of that soul that you are, right? Be that which you are. And it's beautiful because I see that in you. I see that you are being that which you are. And it's not being that which you have been programmed to be. It's not being that which society expects you to be. It's not being that which your parents raised you to be. It's being that which you are. That divine spark within you is being expressed outwardly. And that's kind of what he meant. And I realized it later in life, like, oh, I get it, right? I get it, that we have to reach deep down inside of ourselves to truly understand ourselves. And, you know, the word love is you have to love yourself. And I want people to know out there is it's okay to love yourself, even if you've done bad things in the world, even if you've had a world of hurting or you've hurt other people. It's okay to love yourself, and not in some selfish, narcissistic way, but just have a deep love and appreciation for your being, for that divine spark within you. And I tell you, the moment you do, your life changes. That spark begins to blossom and grow, and your life will completely change.
Yes, and then you take the responsibility for your own life. To me, responsibility is a great, great word. It's the ability to respond. It's choosing actions. So when life's circumstances and traumas and everything are imposed, I can choose how I respond to that. And I choose to respond to everything in light of love, because ultimately that gives me much more clarity of thinking and is much more effective. And it's definitely in harmony with my life's purpose. So we need to start taking responsibility for our actions and how we interact in this world and what we do with what life, you know, throws in front of us.
Yeah, 100%. Guys, listen, I want you to go out there and I want you to subscribe over to Cathy's website. How to get there is trans-formation. It's TRANCE, a little dash, and then formation, FORMATION.com. It's also linked up below. We're putting it in the chat so you guys can find that. It'll also be on the screen here once this all goes out there. But please go over there and subscribe to Cathy. If you also noticed, if you go to redpillproject.substack.com, that is our Substack, there are 2 new articles posted out there by Cathy O'Brien, and she is all linked up there as well. So please go check that out. Read those articles and then go ahead and listen to her podcast. And you can subscribe to her audio podcast directly from there, but it also gives direct links to her website. Cathy, thank you so much for joining me. I can't wait to have you back on. We're gonna have to figure something out because I want to have you back on. There's so much more that we can talk about. You can't fit it in an hour and a half. We could do this for hours, but I know we got busy schedules today, so we got to say goodbye to everybody. But much love, respect. God bless everybody. Take care. Have a great night. We'll see you guys next time.
Do not try and bend the spoon. That's impossible. Only try to realize the truth.
What truth?
There is no spoon.